There is no other medium after that replicates the human experience.
The fact that you managed to convince police officers to get in an office room, have 20, 30, 35 people.
We blew up a car, but we found some secret tunnels underneath the town that connect the castle.
It's basically a way to capture the real world and reconstruct it in the most efficient and photorealistic manner.
It was like me walking around inside a video because everything was photorealistic textures. How do we create the 3D photogrammetry scenes in VR? Every company on the planet should have a box and a camera so they can film their training scenarios, they can film their procedures.
You're literally on Polycam scanning different places and telling people how to make money on Sketchfab. What is up, beautiful people? Welcome back to another episode of the Bad Decisions podcast, where we give you guys a backstage pass into the minds of creatives, entrepreneurs, and visionaries.
And our today's guest is someone who creates reality in virtual reality. He's the co-founder of RiVR, a UK-based VR production company that specializes in immersive training. They've trained numerous police officers and firefighters in near-to-life fire and crime scene environments. Everybody, this is Alex James Harvey. How's it going, Alex?
Good to see you both. Amazing, Tar. It's a nice sunny Sunday in the UK.
Oh my God, this is the first time we are recording a podcast on a Sunday. So thank you for joining us on a Sunday on the podcast.
I think it is really, I'm impressed that it's Sunday. I'm impressed that you two are so keen on a Sunday, and I'm definitely feeling that keenness as well. I love a Sunday, and I love scanning talks.
Yeah, you know what? We got a lot of conversations to cover today, Alex, and I'm just going to tell everybody we're going to be talking VR, AR, XR, and photogrammetry, nerfs, and freaking Gaussian splatting, because that's what we've been all about the past few weeks. And I know you guys are excited about it. And you, Alex, on your own time, I mean, you're a busy man. You work on a lot of cool things at RiVR, and we're going to talk about that because you work with the government institutions. You provide training for many people around the world, not just in the UK, but outside of the UK. But in your free time, you do a lot of cool shit too. You're literally on Polycam scanning different places and telling people how to make money on Sketchfab. And then you're at SpaceX watching rocket launches. And I'm like, what does this guy do? And that's actually how we met. We met online, I think through Polycam.
No, it was, I think, I watched him going to the Starship base.
Yeah, I think it was Polycam. I think it was through Polycam because you posted a lot about Polycam. We posted about Polycam before. So I think that's how we stumbled upon each other's profiles. But you do a lot of crazy shit. We're going to get into all of it. But first of all, before we get deep into it, what were you doing at SpaceX? Because that video looked super cool of you watching the rockets.
Yeah, watching the rockets take off, or which video? Because last time we actually spoke, the first time I spoke to you, I was in a pool swimming around in Houston, and I had my Ray-Ban stories on, and I was filming videos on my glasses, and then we started talking on Instagram. That's the first time we met. I was in Houston, and on that trip, I was like 5 hours away from Boca Chica. So I thought, let's just take the time before the show. I was there for a VR show with Pico. But before the show, let's drive down to Boca Chica, see some rockets. So I could not believe that I could just drive into Starbase. I drove into Starbase, and I'm getting shivers now as we talk about it because I'm just looking at rockets in front of me. I couldn't believe that you could get so close to them. But I was literally, I don't know, 10 meters from a Starship, and I was lost for words, but I was there literally just to have a little look, and I was hoping that one of those 2 days there might have been the launch of the next launch of the Starship, but they cancelled it, and it's still yet to take off. But before that, I've been a lot of time in Houston, Florida, and I've seen 3 rocket launches of the Falcon 9, which you can probably see a Falcon 9 behind me here. This is a 3D print Falcon 9.
I see that right now, actually.
Did you scan
Heavy,
it?
maybe
You
Falcon.
didn't, right? You didn't scan
No,
that, right?
I didn't scan it, but I did use Polycam when I was in Boca Chica, and I did a 360 photo with inside Polycam. But drones are very not allowed around there, so I didn't take off the drone. A fail for me, but maybe I was too excited. I didn't do a video either for a bit of a splat. I didn't do that, so that's my fail. I've got 2 guys going again on Sunday to Houston for a week. I've had to cancel this trip, but they're going to go for me. Maybe they'll go down and do something in Houston again.
Dude, it's crazy. Are you doing this out of passion, or is this related to anything you guys are doing at RiVR?
No, this is pure passion, although we are working with Tesla. So we've got RiverLink kits that are in Tesla factories, and we're teaching the firefighters about hazards and stuff using RiverLink. And we've been to Fremont factory in California, and I've done a tour of the cars there in 3D 180. But everything else, like you said about polycam and scanning, is pure passion. Pure, I just use my phone all the time to scan stuff and put it online. I was at Codemasters for 8 years, and I was making game trailers. So I was the video editor for Codemasters to make their car trailers, Flashpoint trailers, and I was the cameraman inside the game world. So I would drive the game on a PC, smash some cars together, then watch the replay of that crash, and then during the replay, detach the camera, and then I can move the camera around like a drone in the game world. And that was before drones. So this was like 2013. Then 2014, I bought a drone and started doing real world car trailers. The transferable skill was amazing to be able to be videoing inside a game world with my thumbs and then replay time. And then I was in the real world chasing cars around with a drone. So that's how that happened. But yeah, sorry, I'm going to forget the question because I get too excited.
No. I was just asking about your passion there, but since you brought it up, and for everybody listening and watching right now, what you guys do at River is really crazy. Me and Farad have been watching you guys for a while, but can you tell everybody what that's like? Because VR training is a term that for a lot of people might make sense if they've played virtual reality games before, if they've experienced 360 video before and 360 content. But for a lot of people, they might not actually know what that is like. They might be expecting some low poly experience, but clearly, based on what me and Farad have seen, you guys do something different. I mean, through not just the UK, but other countries, you guys must have done something crazy impressive. So can you tell everybody what RiverLink is actually, because that's one of the products you guys have, and what River does in general?
I guess I can tell you what RiverLink is, but if we were going to go back in time and do it in order, then I would be talking about another product first, because we actually made fire investigation product before we made RiverLink, and we realized that it was too ahead of its time. So then we made RiverLink. But maybe I should touch on that. I mean, I left Codemasters and I tried virtual reality, and I was amazed with it when, the Vive, I was trying Vive. That was my first sort of experience inside VR. And then Gear VR came out, and we were looking at 360 videos inside Gear VR with a phone clipped into a plastic case.
Yeah.
And that was all fine. But when I was inside virtual reality, I don't know if you ever tried a VR experience called realities.io. And that was inside Steam
I
store.
haven't tried it.
It was in the Steam store, and you could walk around a photogrammetry room inside virtual reality. And I was amazed that you could actually walk around this bit. It was like being inside a video. It was like me walking around inside a video because everything was photorealistic textures. So before RiverLink came River Investigate, because we found that we could photogrammetry scan the inside of burnt containers for the fire investigators. So we started by hiring a piece of land in the UK, and we put 4 containers, those big metal containers, on this land, and we got fire investigators round, and we dressed the scenes so that they were like a front room or a bedroom or a kitchen, and then we set fire to them, with a cause of fire being the plug or the PC. So we burnt these containers in the real world, and then we got the fire service in to put the fire out. And then we took out each individual item one by one and photogrammetry scanned each item. Each container had about 70 items inside it. And then we put all that back together in Unity, and we made an interactive fire investigation scene for them. And then we did it 7 times. And now we have 9 scenarios, and we sell it as a fire investigation software, multiplayer. But it was the first thing we made. But the market for it is very niche. It's firefighters that do investigation, and that's not every firefighter. So although it's being used now, it was made 5 years ago. Like when I sent you that video of this morning, I sent you a video of an explosion in Leicestershire. That was the same sort of time we made that. So that was photogrammetry, and that was first, and then came RiverLink. Obviously, River Investigate is still there now being used. But then we moved on to 360 video and realized that the investigation scenes are not for everyone. It's very sort of hard to get people into that environment if they need a PC and a Vive and lighthouse sensors and all these things. So we moved back towards 360 video that was much more accessible for people to get into. And how that started back in the day was we were doing videos for Thompson Holidays. I think they're called TUI now. They're a holiday company in the UK. And they wanted to show what it's like to be on their planes, to see the extra legroom seats on their planes. And they wanted to see what it's like on the cruise ships, to video on the cruise ships in 360 video. So it was a horrible task that me and two other guys had to go on a cruise ship to Barbados to shoot some 360 video. So
oh man, that must have been extremely difficult.
Yeah, it was really hard. And we were in the hot tubs with the cameras. We had, actually back then it was the GoPro Omni. So we were using the GoPro with a load of cables coming off it, and we were stitching we had the stitching software to put it all together. But what we made for them turned into RiVR. So because they wanted to synchronize the video with 4 people in a holiday shop, they wanted to show it to 4 people at the same time in a headset. So we got Gear VRs with phones clipped in and a laptop and a router, and we made a piece of software. And back then it was called VR Sync, but then it subsequently changed to RiVR. But that was the first incarnation, if you like, of that software that now is used by everyone all over the world in these boxes to synchronize video. So it's basically, RiVR is a box of headsets, and it can be 5, 10, 15, 20, however many you want. And we build the router into the box so that there's no need for them to connect to their Wi-Fi, because that just causes a world of pain. And then we load the videos, the MP4 videos, onto the headset and onto the laptop. So there's no streaming of any data. The video is on each device, and it's just sharing the XYZ of where the person's looking. So I realized that we just needed products. If we want to have a company, then we need to have products to be able to sustain that company. And RiVR and RiVR Investigate are the first 2 products that we have made, and they're still going now. And now I've just been walking around the office here, and there's like hundreds of big plastic boxes everywhere, which is people that are building RiVR kits and shipping them out to people, because the camera quality is so cool now that we teach people how to shoot their own 360 video. So I call RiVR everyone's stage 1 VR. It is every company on the planet should have a box and a camera, so they can film their training scenarios, they can film their procedures. And we've just hit blue light services first, but now we're into all types of environments, like every warehouse that wants to show the procedures of leaving to do a fire escape. Which route do you leave the building to go on a fire escape, or inductions if people are joining the company. They also can film their inductions themselves because it's in their language, it's in contextual, it's in their place. So it's really good for them to just shoot their own video, load it onto the box, and have a library of content that's relevant to them. And that's what RiVR is. It's very simple because it's just synchronized 3D 360 video.
That's very interesting. That's super interesting. But I want to take it back, Faraz, to the part that you set those containers on fire. So was that an R&D process for you and your team? Or was that something, because
how would you get into
the idea,
fire?
Where did that idea came from? Yeah.
And emergency services, like who would think, you can think of training for video games, there's so many other use cases that average people would go for, but then you went ahead to this extremely niche market. How did you end up there?
We literally started by, I saw photogrammetry inside the Vive, inside realities.io, and I thought, this is cool, but can we do it with video? So what I wanted to do was have like stop motion of, we wanted to test it to see if we could get videogrammetry into VR, because I could see that we could do photogrammetry. So this was before there was even a RiVR team assembled. It was me tinkering with technology, and we actually got this guy, and we put him inside, we put this guy inside a rig, and we put GoPros all around him, and we just moved his arms, and we tried to do videogrammetry to see if we could do animation. This was 2015, 2016.
Right.
And so my idea was that we wanted to do videogrammetry and then put it into VR. But when I got people together, they were saying to me, this is far too advanced. Like, you can't be doing this in 2016. Just rein it back a bit and do something different. So the thing that it got reined back to was we had a friend called Paul Spate who was in Leicestershire Fire and Rescue Service, and he allowed us to have access to their world, and we would film 360 videos for him of procedures happening and firefighters doing stuff, and that was cool. That's what birthed the sort of Riverlink content for the fire service. But while we were there, he said to me, come over here and look what the guys are doing in fire investigation. And they were burning containers and putting 5 people into the container. But as the people went in, the instructor said to them, don't touch anything. You're not allowed to touch anything because we've got another 5 people coming in later on today and we can't have you touch it. So my brain just went, oh, let's just scan everything, put it into VR, and now you can have as many firefighters as you want coming through and picking things up. Because in the real world, when they go and investigate a crime, they need to pick up the cup and look underneath it. They need to see if it's burnt underneath. And you can go on YouTube and search all this. You'll see the fire investigation stuff. It's amazing now because they don't have to breathe in all that carcinogens into their lungs. They don't have to burn the environments.
Yeah.
So as soon as the firefighters, it's a really interesting process of how we sell that to them, because once they see it and know about it, it's almost illegal for them to then go back to doing the old ways of training. And so that sells really well once they realize what's available. And I still see people now online burning containers at the back of fire stations just to investigate crimes. And the bonus for me is that photogrammetry was a static scene. There was a static scene with no movement, so it was really good for VR. It was less painful with the processors and the textures, because at first they said to us that we couldn't do it. There was too many textures on all of the items, so it's a painful process that I'm hoping is going to get better soon. But that decimation of mesh and texture and simplification down to get models that are okay in VR used to be such a pain in my arse. Because it was the biggest blocker. But now software's coming out that's knowing that this surface is flat and it's going to make it 4 polygons instead of 4 million. And that's where things are heading. So it's a lot easier now. But hopefully that gives you a bit of a story about Riverlink and River Investigate.
That is very well put. And, you know, before we get into it, I just want to say one thing. Your business model is just about to explode in 2023, 2024, 2025, because, dude, photogrammetry and all these technologies are becoming so widely accessible and so easily doable, because, right, just like you mentioned, it's getting the right textures, right, to look good, especially if they're burnt, they have a lot of detail, intricate details. Man, right now you can get that with a fucking iPhone and get it to work really well. And so for you, the process becomes a lot easier. And what you are doing, especially with Riverlink, which is really interesting, and I want to make sure everybody noticed. So you do have the services that you provide to all these institutions where you guys go in and do the production yourself. But there's also services where you guys are giving them the capability to use a 360 camera, record their own trainings, and then get that box in anytime they want. They want to train 1,000 people in a day. If they have the numbers, they can, and they don't have to set up anything but a room with your Riverlinks, and they can put on the headsets. And the coolest part was, we saw this on your website, there's a laptop, the tutor gets to control the laptop right through.
Draw stuff.
Use the chalk or whatever to draw stuff, and then talk to the guys who are within the VR experience. I mean, this just seems so obvious when you've already made it. It's like, why didn't this go for everything else? You know what I mean? Why isn't everybody using this already?
I think that it's just a bit of a road. It's a bit of a road, isn't it? It's a bit of a journey that everyone needs to work it out themselves on the path. And I think it's easier for you to understand how that's really beneficial. But when you are an organization that is so used to iPads and phones, and they've only just got used to drones, VR and 360 video is like a step too far for quite a lot of them. So we have to do demos to them. We have to put the headset on people's heads before they understand it. But you're right, we do self-shot content or professional content. But we normally do the professional content as their first step, and then we give them a camera and teach them how to do it. For example, I flew into Washington 2 years ago, and we worked for Department of Homeland Security. We flew into Dulles Airport, and we shot, during COVID, some bag searching, some patrol check things in the airport in 360 3D video. And then it was also how they use their airport scanners, teach people how to use the scanners. And that was shot by us for them. And then we gave them cameras so they could do contextual photos and videos in all the airports. And we just found out that you can train security personnel really good if you've got 5 videos that teach them all the basics. But then there's baggage handlers, airport staff, like coffee staff. There's everyone in that airport that also sees it and then wants to buy it and use it for their area. So it just explodes once you show one person, because they all use their creativity to go, we could use this for us. We can go and film our own content. And when you tell them that this camera is going to give them the perspective of their head, they just, it blows their mind. But I think you are really far ahead with your thinking. I like to say, humbly, that we were very far ahead with our thinking, and it's only just catching up to the masses. I see Riverlink as being like a printer in every office. Every office or every warehouse or every place would normally buy a printer. You'll eventually buy a Riverlink kit for your well-being training, to do your training on personnel for inductions. It will be just something that's in an office that you use, and you'll just expect it.
And right now the Riverlink is using, I believe you guys are using Pico headsets. Is that right?
Yeah, we've got the new box can take Oculus as well as Pico. Right. It's just a box of 8. We call that the Fusion box because now we're seeing the merge of the headsets, because the Pico headsets are 3 degrees of freedom, and a lot of the Oculus stuff, as soon as Oculus killed Oculus Go as a headset, everyone thought the video was dead. And I was like... My hands were in my head. My head was in my hands. I couldn't believe they did it, because video and 3D 180 video is stunning when you get it done right in a headset. So I was a bit disappointed when they killed the Go. So we just went with Pico because they were 3DOF headsets. But now all the headsets are converging into one headset, which is going to be doing 6DOF and 3DOF in the headset. And everyone will eventually forget about having a standalone 3DOF headset. They'll be able to do both in them.
I mean, the reason I even brought this up is because when you mentioned that every office is going to have one, I mean, one of the biggest barriers to entry for virtual reality has always been the form factor of virtual reality headsets. A lot of people, they don't even want to put the headsets on. But you can imagine, because you have the Ray-Ban glasses yourself. I mean, we haven't even tried them, but I've heard so many good reviews from people. You can just imagine how all of these are going to connect together eventually down the line. When the form factor gets smaller, when it becomes more like glasses, that's when you're going to see, Riverlink with literally glasses now that is going to give you the exact same experience. That is going to be the part where there you go. That's what I'm talking about.
That's it.
Are you recording this podcast right now?
From now it will be recorded.
I am recording you now, but these are the old ones. I'm still waiting for the new ones.
When are you going to get them?
I've ordered them. I'm just waiting for them to arrive. But yeah, this is what I was filming inside the pool when we first spoke. But you're right. The form factor is going to... They're just playing it from both ends at the moment, as in they've got this and they've got this, and eventually there's going to be something in the middle. And I just think you're right with your thinking, and I think Mark Zuckerberg's mentioned it quite a lot, that they're trying the smallest form factor and the biggest form factor, and you've got the Vision Pro coming out, which is obviously quite big as well. But eventually it will be glasses, and eventually then it'll probably be contact lenses. So the reason I'm so excited about VR and have been for 5 years is because it's the last medium. There is no other medium after that replicates the human experience. That's why I'm so excited. It makes me shiver again, because you both understand it. And what frustrates me in the olden days was when you have VR, sometimes there's a need for it to be cartoon-like or stylized. But most people want to be inside a virtual world that looks photorealistic. I don't want to be in a world that looks like The Simpsons. I want to be in Game of Thrones on the wall with Jon Snow looking over. And I can do that now. So that's where I'm trying to get to.
Yeah. You mentioned something which was really important so of course you have this mindset and mentality about that VR is the future, education in VR is the future. But how do you go about when you meet local authorities or government institutions?
Because they're the hardest to convince, I assume.
How do you convince these institutions with your vision and with the trainings that you provide in VR? They are probably not tech savvy. They are not young people. You have to convince people who are probably middle-aged to adults, and probably they never wore VR before in their life. What does the convincing look like?
It was interesting because before we got to the photogrammetry fire investigation scene, we had a demo scene that was photogrammetry inside a burnt room, and we scanned it and we put it into VR, and we had a body that was on the floor, and you can actually see this on YouTube as well. You walk over to this doorway and you make them look out of this doorway into this alleyway, and they see a body on the floor, and that was the moment. For so many people in the blue light services, we would just go to them and do a demo and show them that demo. We called it the Cora Suite demo just because that was the name of the building. But as soon as they felt the feeling they wanted to put their hands on the wall, they were sold. And after that point, they are sold with VR. So it is an emotional feeling. If you can get someone in VR to feel like they're going to cry or feel like they're going to fall over, like Richie's plank experience, if you show that in VR, you're walking along and it feels really like you can't step onto this plank.
The one you're at the top of the skyscraper, right? And you feel like you're going to fall.
That's it. We literally showed that demo in London. Some people show that to the firefighters. Then they call us to come and do a demo to them, because these are people that are like, they're massively against VR or technology. They've got a preset mindset that is, I don't agree with it. It needs to be real. And as soon as they have a go on what we had as our demo, Cora Suite, and you give them that emotional connection, they literally change their opinion on the spot. I've seen so many people change their opinion. And then it opens a bit of a can of worms sometimes, because then they want to have a photorealistic scene for their world, but then we tell them the price of it, and then they don't want it because it costs too much.
Now they're like, can you build this entire building and have this entire gaming experience? I'm like, bro, you're asking me to make a video game. We know that. Because the moment they see the possibility, now they think, okay, anything can be done. Well, yes, but come on.
What's your budget?
It's going to take some time.
Budget?
Yeah, that's the part they don't understand as well. So how do you deal with that?
Then, as soon as they have that, they have that moment where they're like, I love it, I want it now. And we say, okay, just rein it back a bit. We tell them that is stage 2 and stage 1 is Riverlink. And so we say it's the same headset. You're just going to rewind time a little bit. You're going to get buy-in from your organization first by buying a 360 camera. And if they can film their environments or their people doing procedures with a 360 camera, might cost them $1,000 or 1,500 quid to get going. Then they buy a headset. Then they can buy a Riverlink kit. So we do that. It's the wow factor of a photogrammetry scene scaled back to 360 video. And if they've got enough budget and a little bit more expertise in their industry, then we tell them about 3D 180 footage and how if they buy a Canon R5 with a dual fisheye lens, if they can do that, they can have a little bit more immersive content. And I mean, as soon as Vision Pro comes out and starts filming with these two cameras and doing some crazy something with the IPD, as soon as that happens and people can shoot immersive content on their mobile phones, 3D 180, then people will understand more. But yeah, that's how we do it. We do photogrammetry wow factor, scale it back to 360 content.
I think there is an important point which Alex mentioned, is sparking an emotion if you want to convince someone. And this is not only about VR. I think if you are in sales and marketing, if you're trying to sell any product.
Film, movies. The best movies are the ones that spark an emotion. Literally the first scene you get in there, you already feel something. You either feel sad or you feel happy. The moment you evoke an emotion, people are going to remember you. And you create that. And especially in a situation like you said, if you're meeting with 10 extremely serious officers, I cannot imagine what that's like. So I just want to say one thing. What you're doing is truly exceptional because, with virtual reality, with augmented reality, all of these spaces where a lot of people have, like you mentioned, a premeditated mindset where they're like, you know what? No, we're not going to do that. That's not for us. For you to be able to actually utilize that industry and create a truly meaningful relationship with institutions like the firefighters, the police officers, and go ahead and create a product that is not just helping them, but actually replacing what they're doing in a very meaningful way. So not only is your solution scalable, because like you mentioned, you can have many virtual reality headsets, you can have the experience done one time and then taught to thousands of students. And at the same time, it's cost efficient. And ultimately, it's safer because, I mean, we weren't aware of this. We didn't think about this in the first place. But when you mentioned when you burn something, right, it's dangerous for the students that get in there every single time. And you have all of these points added when you are presenting, I assume, to them to show them the product. So it's really exceptional what you're doing. And I want to ask you about the development side of things, because a lot of the people who watch and listen to this podcast are either artists or developers. So what do you guys actually use if we're talking about the 3D side of things, right? Because you guys do photogrammetry. What do you guys use in terms of your software to create some of these worlds if they're not just 360 videos?
I guess it's really good to I bark on about it a lot, 3DOF or 6DOF. That's where the split is for the company. It's basically Riverlink, or it's a photogrammetry immersive scene. And I think what you're talking about then is the software and how do we create the 3D photogrammetry scenes in VR. It's very, the 360 stuff is just video editing, and that's an easier side of things, which I did come from as well. But yeah, the photogrammetry side of things, and that is for fire investigators that we do that. The majority is for fire investigators. But the reason I think we managed to sell that quite a bit is because we were doing it for the government in the UK and the US. We were doing counter-terrorism crime scenes, and we were photogrammetry scanning bombs going off and explosions for the government. And we can never show people these scenes because they're so top secret and all that. I hate NDAs, but we can never show these scenes. But that's where we learned most of our skills, because we had to do the 7/7 bombings in London. We went and scanned the items from those bomb blasts, and we recreated it in virtual reality and made it into a virtual scene for the government. But that process of doing that, I think you mean what software? And the main software that the guys use here is reality capture, and that's by a company called Capturing Reality. And we have a partnership with them because we use their software all the time. But that is thousands of photos of lots of objects from different scenes. And we had a rig that would also do some of that if the object was like delicate and falling apart. But I always break that down into inside out and outside in. There's either an object on a turntable that you're going around, or you're inside a room and you've got to do the whole of every wall and every ceiling. That process, as you're aware, is getting so much easier now because things like Polycam. But back in the day, it was literally just, I say back in the day, like I'm a granddad.
It was like 5 years ago.
Yeah. 5 years ago, we were doing that with, 4,000 photos inside a burnt room. And then we were taking out object by object and doing maybe 300 or 400 photos of each one. But then it was such a pain because you had to decimate everything. So the art team at River just went through hundreds and hundreds of objects where they had to simplify the mesh, redo the textures, then make it like VR ready. And they had a certain limit of objects that they could put in. And were those objects going to be interactable or not? They were all like, they were concerns for that team because it had to be at least 90 frames per second. It had to be good enough inside a headset that you didn't pick something up and drop it and it'll float to the floor. Like it has to drop and things have to move around. It's amazing for me now because things are getting easier. That workflow is getting easier, which means the creativity can explode more. And I've just got, 10 more ideas that I'm working on. The River Investigate was definitely created 4 years ago, and there's a lot more things happening now with different stuff. Yeah.
That's
because
awesome.
of that tech.
I just want to ask if you guys are building a VR experience. Again, if it's a video, I understand, but if it's a 3D experience, do you guys use Unity or Unreal for that as well in your pipeline?
Good. Yeah, it's good that you mentioned the two because we've always done Unity. I've never done anything in Unreal. So I know I saw your video.
What? Come on.
You're going to leave.
By the way, I'm just joking. Just disclaimer, we have nothing against Unity. It's just we use Unreal Engine all the time. And that's why I wanted to mention, Unity did have their whole shenanigans happened recently, but I was just curious because a lot of the virtual reality development is done on the Unity side as well. So that's why I was curious to see what you guys use.
I was laughing at myself because I saw your video recently when I was scrolling through your reels where you did a joke at the start and said, this on Unity. And then you said, only joking, Unreal. So I love that
Sorry
video.
about that.
I've always wanted to use Unreal for stuff because, but it's basically driven by my CTO. His main focus was Unity. And so he decided to do all of the stuff that we were doing in Unity. And then it continued and continued. We made River Link in Unity, and we did River Investigate, and we've also done River CSI in Unity. So,
what is River CSI? Wait.
Fucking cool.
What
and
is
he just breezed past by it.
What is River CSI?
Sounds like
it
the
wasn't
TV
on your
show.
website.
Sounds like the TV show.
That wasn't on your website.
Yeah, good. It's good that you've been checking the site. But so CSI is the new product we've been working on. That is basically a sandbox crime scene that allows you inside virtual reality. Inside a headset, you can, in a standalone headset, you can go into a crime house and you can lay a body on the floor, move the arm, drip some blood, place a gun on the floor, press save, call your friends in and do a crime scene investigation in VR in a headset. So that is River CSI.
You guys are fucking making games right now. This is totally a video
That
game.
is super interesting.
But that was born out of me visiting Derby Crime House. So in Derby, the university there, they have a whole house, an actual 4-bedroomed house that has cameras in every room, and the forensic students walk in to a crime scene that's been pre-made, and the students are watched by the instructors on cameras to see if they're doing fingerprints properly, to see if they're noticing the blood splatter on the walls. And basically, all we've done is lift that and stick it into VR and allow them to have different weapons, different houses, different bodies.
Are you going to use that for training police officers, or is that something that you guys want to work with local police authorities with that?
Yeah, it's for training police officers for forensic investigation. And it's also for universities and schools because there's a lot of students that are going through that process. Now they don't have to use a crime house. They could all just be at home in the crime scene doing the investigation. Everything's the same. You can pull down a camera, take photos. You can lay evidence markers. You can do dusting for fingerprints. It's all the things you need to do in a crime scene. But eventually, I want to be able to do an immersive documentaries inside that. So you'd watch half of a 2D documentary on Netflix. Then you put the headset on and go into the crime scene, investigate it yourself.
All right, I think Bad Decisions and River needs to work together in some of these things because all we're about is immersive storytelling, right? I mean, I don't know if you saw the Egyptian documentary we created, literally the same concept. We've never been there, recreated the entire tomb based off of photos and vlogs we found online. And all we wanted to do was give people an experience of what it's like to be in King Tut's tomb because we couldn't be there ourselves. So we were like, you know what, this is the only way we can do it now. And we were surprised as to how good it looks. And when we, as a test, put that entire scene into VR, because you can do that with Unity and Unreal Engine. That's the beautiful part. And when we were inside a tomb, I remember I put the headset on Farhad's head first, and I was just controlling the computer. And Farhad was like, oh my God, wow, this is so cool. I'm like, okay, stop overacting. Like, okay, I get it. Like, we've seen this tomb for the past 4 months. We've been working on it. And then I put the headset on. It's a completely different experience, especially now in 2023 when you have dynamic lighting and shadows working in real time. Just everything looks gorgeous. And I totally understand. And now I want to say something as well. So I come from a video gaming background. I was in the esports world. And I used to stream this game called Phasmophobia. It was a horror game that was extremely famous. What would happen is you would start as 4 guys or girls in a truck outside of a haunted house. And all of you in that truck had tools that you would pick up, and there was limited tools. So you had flashlights, fingerprint scanners, different cameras, and then you would go inside the house and you would look for the ghost. And I remember that game was extremely fun because, first of all, you were working in teams and you were judging each other's work. So if someone had the camera, you would tell them, yo, you're not looking the right direction. You have to look to the other side. If I had the flashlight, I had to look towards a certain, angle. And that is literally what you're describing right now. But instead of a game that is just made for fun, it has real life use cases. And I remember that game was so realistic So I can only imagine if you put that in VR, and I assume there was a VR version to it that I didn't play, but it makes perfect sense that you would go on and do River CSI because you can totally have the exact same tools with the exact same look, work the exact same way, and the people who are using these tools from their home, these are students who might not even have money yet to go into university. They can actually get your application, your software, and start training for the real world. So when they go and want to get hired, they already know how to do the job. Like, this is crazy.
It is totally. And it's amazing that you understand it in that detail, because there's a lot of people that we have to, like you said, go through a process of them understanding what that means for them. If I say River CSI, they don't imagine that it is the same as their crime house. But it is different to, the CSI is very different to River Investigate. And because the fire investigators always have, in one burnt room, there is one causation of fire. So that might be the plug that is set on fire. And there's always that. It can't change. But the crime scene people want things to be different. They want dynamic scenes. They want to be able to place the cup down, place the knife down in different locations. And that was the reason it had to be a different piece of software, because the fire scenes have a specific causation and the crime scenes need to have dynamic environments and change things around. But I love it when you can go in and pick up the person's hand and place it differently on the sofa and then drip some blood on them. And this is all going to be in mixed reality as well. So imagine the whole crime scene investigation inside a headset, inside a house. Now imagine no house, but it's in your house. Now you can lay the body on your sofa.
Dude, that's some freaky shit. You got like a dead body on your dining table, and you're like doing this, and your mom walk in and is like, "What are you doing?" Nothing, just inspecting a dead body here. Don't mind me.
This is getting really next level. But you guys have made so many experiences, and I want to ask you, what is the most exciting and the coolest experience that you guys ever made? We saw the police chase. That was quite interesting. But which one do you think is the best that you guys have made so far?
I wonder if it needs to be split into 360 video, 3D video, and then a room scale scene, because there's so many differences.
Yeah, we can do that. Yeah. Let's look at both categories.
Okay, so if we're going to say 3D 180 video that we've made was definitely inside the Tesla Fremont factory, being this close to the machines and putting the camera this close to machines and then showing it to the Tesla employees the next day. And they actually said to me, "We don't even get this close. We literally got the camera closer than you can get on a tour of the factory. So you can never go in the factory anyway and have a tour, but two, you can get closer than you can on a tour." So that was probably the 3D 180. That was probably one of the best for that. The 360 car chase was a good one, but we also did riot police training in London. So we were in amongst horses and riot police and shields. That was also good for filming. But I think probably the most exciting 3D scene, as in photogrammetry scene, was probably we blew up a car. We blew up. We put a load of explosions into a car with the government, and we scanned the whole scene post-blast as a photogrammetry scene. I've never experienced that sort of thing. That, again, we can't really talk about it. It was a private scene for the government, but we don't get to show it.
Dude, can we have Bad Decisions invited to some of these cool experiences? For fuck's sake, I mean, blowing up a car seems so cool. I would love to see that. Were you there yourself? You were present at the time of the explosion.
Yeah, there was about 4 or 5 of us there. We've got a video of it. There's 3D video, 360 video, and a photogrammetry scene. And that's how my brain thinks about stuff. So I always think of 2D documentary, 360 video, 3D 180, and then a photogrammetry scene. And that connection of those 4 pieces is what I call step inside. And that's my, I don't know, we apply it to people's projects that we can do, but some people's projects we can't do. And so the most exciting one where we did combine all of those was a project in Warwick, which is my hometown, where there's a castle and a church, and I love scanning things there. That's where I'm thinking I want to speak to Netflix more. I'm always pestering Netflix because they have a VR app on the store, and it is literally you sit on a sofa and you watch their 2D content on a screen in front of them. Now, I want that content to just be a wraparound 360 and then a room scale experience. Like, you can do it now, but we need to maybe clip this bit out for Instagram. Netflix, to watch this podcast, they need to understand that you and we can make an immersive photogrammetry scene. All we need is access to one of their IP. And I'm using this as a platform to shout at Netflix, because if, have you seen The Staircase on Netflix, where it's a crime documentary? Or maybe Game of Thrones. You've obviously seen Game of Thrones. Yeah. You could watch the 2D Game of Thrones inside a VR headset, and then at any point in time, you can just go to 360 or 3D 180. You could be behind the scenes watching it be made in 3D 180. Then you could be stood on the wall with Jon Snow, looking at Jon Snow and looking over the wall and seeing White Walkers charging at the wall. Like, this is all possible 2 years ago. They don't even know about it now. I want to do it tomorrow.
You know what? I love that. And I think that is slowly becoming more and more apparent to people. And that is why we create the content we do, because what we do with our content is we always try to find use cases for it, right? When we found out about Gaussian splatting, which we're going to get into in a moment, which is, for anybody that doesn't know about this term, which you should by now, because we had 7 videos about it for like the longest time. But it's basically a way to capture the real world and reconstruct it in the most efficient and photorealistic manner. And it is extremely efficient to view at the same time. So just one of those is a good example, because we tested it multiple times with different scans, and then we started taking it to movies. We literally took a movie from 43 years ago. You saw The Shining, and we took that camera that was one shot moving to the right side, and then now we have other camera angles 43 years later that we can use. Not that I want to change what the movie was, I don't want to change the movie. The movie is perfect, but I'm just saying, dude, this is possible with a movie made 43 years ago. Imagine what's possible with something that was shot yesterday.
Imagine now they put in every single movie scene, they tell the director, hey, make sure there's a 360 camera in the scene, so you guys are recording everything.
Yeah, even if it's a low budget film and they don't even have a 360 camera, every location you go to that is going to be valuable to your audience, the hardcore audience. Just ask someone with their iPhone, just go and scan a 360 and it's done. It's literally that easy. And then you can share this content with all of the hardcore fans who usually go and get the books, go get all of
the t-shirt, jersey,
the collectibles from that. They would love to be able to go inside each scene in 3D.
Even if it's walking around the 3-dimensional photogrammetry set of a film, it's just be behind the scenes and you could have a little look around. But what's more frustrating, I'll give you a bit of info that's even more frustrating that I heard a year ago, is that most films that are shot, and especially the new season, one of the seasons of Game of Thrones, they did this on, I can't talk too much about it, they take a photogrammetry rig and they put each of the cast into the rig. Every time they do a shoot, they T-pose the cast and take a photogrammetry scan of them in costume, and they only use it for continuity and a little bit of VFX. That blew my mind, because they also LiDAR scan every set. So they already photogrammetry.
They have everything.
They have it all, but they don't use it for anything immersive. They only use it for VFX and green screen stuff.
To fix errors, essentially, right? To fix errors that might have happened during the shoot, or they want to change something and like on a minuscule scale, not to use it to some extent of actually promotional material, to go above and beyond and give the fans what they could actually want.
Yeah, imagine chucking that at me and you and saying, okay, you've got a month to go and make something in VR with all this content. You could come up with something groundbreaking within like 2 weeks, and
we can come up with season
power.
10.
Yeah, that's the power of it. That's the power of it these days, and people don't understand what's possible with stuff they've already been scanning. And it was so cool watching your Shining shot, because you're making camera angles that they never even created. But most of the modern films now have all of this data, and they just don't use it for anything like this.
Yes, and I hope that changes. And you know what? You mentioned that about Game of Thrones. I remember precisely what it was like being in that world. Those couple of years where Game of Thrones, especially season 4 or 5, those perfect times. Every weekend, the entire world was watching the series. So imagine you drop something like that at that time. Dude,
Everybody would go on it.
everybody's gonna freaking get it.
Just jumping in on that, imagine that if you're watching Game of Thrones now, like a new season's come out, you're sat on your sofa, you look to your right, you've got a Quest 3 sat next to you, just on the sofa, and you've got Netflix on your big screen, you've just watched the episode, and right at the end, a little QR code pops up on the screen. It says, put on your VR headset now. You put on the headset, and what if the pass-through camera scans that QR code and dumps you into Winterfell? And you're just there in the castle, photogrammetry, straight away. Like, everyone would just be on the floor. They wouldn't understand what's happening, but it's possible today.
Well, isn't that, well, at least something that the Apple Vision Pro is sort of promising? I mean, one of their key features, I guess, in the advertisement, in the commercial, in the keynote that they had was, I believe, was it a kid sitting in the Mandalorian? I forgot what it was, but it was essentially showing you that you can now go ahead and immerse
It was Disney
yourself.
Plus, yeah.
Immerse yourself in TV shows. I'm really looking forward to see what Apple Vision Pro has to offer. Of course, most of these things that they were offering, it really depends on the creators. And by creators, I mean Disney and all that, because I don't think they were making them in-house. I don't think Apple's making these experiences. I believe it's the other companies that have to create these experiences, these shows, and make sure that Apple has enough. Just like when the iPhone came out, you had people creating Doodle Jump and people creating the lighter application or the beer app that you would drink. So they need to have all these people creating for them, which I'm hoping it will happen. But it will be a slow process, but I assume and I hope it will. What is your take on it? I mean, you're in the virtual reality world. You're clearly very well versed in that world. I want to know what's your opinion on the Meta Quest 3 and also Apple Vision Pro. Where do you think all of that is going?
I mean, we've tried the pass-through on the Meta Quest 3, and it's stunning compared to the Quest 2 and compared to all the other bits. But I'm imagining that the Vision Pro is going to wipe the floor with all of them. I was in Cupertino crying when they launched the headset. Literally makes me emotional now. The fact that we've been in VR for so long, waiting for Apple. I've been in VR so long, waiting for Apple to drop something. That I was there I was only in the visitor center. I was in the visitor center watching it on a laptop with my team, and I was just crying because the validation that gives the world is crazy. Like, I no longer, and Facebook doing glasses and Apple doing a headset, like, I never have to fight about it ever again. Whereas I've been trying to convince people that this is the next step, this is the next medium, it's the last medium. I've been doing it for so long. It was so emotional. So I think it's going to be great. It's going to be expensive. People are going to moan about it being expensive. But I
They already are.
When you put it on your head and there is a groundbreaking experience, like when you first did pinch and zoom on an iPhone, or when I first did eye tracking inside a Vario headset, I felt magic. It felt like magic. And if their gaze to click and the pass-through is so stunning, people are going to find it as magic. And when those experiences start coming that start making things burst out of your TV onto your front room floor, then people are going to understand why that's going to be the next thing. And you're going to want to have step inside everything.
That's very true. You know, the concept of the validation of Apple, that's an actual thing. Whenever Apple does something, everybody else follows, and everybody thinks that, you know what, it's time. You know, it's time for this. That's what they did since the beginning. That's what they're doing now. And you know, when Apple comes into a new market, you know they've done their research. They waited many years to make sure this is the right next thing. And clearly, virtual reality is that. And I mean, Farhad, are we going to get one?
Probably.
Because Farhad's like the financial manager of bad decisions. I need to ask Farhad, are we going to get
we have to think. It's coming out in February, right?
Is it February?
I think
Have
so,
you ordered
about
one?
then, yeah. But you could make an experience, I'm sure, that would make you get a dev kit. I'm sure you could do something and they could send you a dev kit. We met with the guys at Apple day after launch and we still haven't got a dev kit. But even just the Shining thing, like imagine that in Vision Pro. They need to know the things that you're doing. Your videos and your content are absolutely what's needed, because the attention span of people wanting to find out about splats and Nerf and PG photogrammetry it's really short. People need to just have your videos fed to them. I love going through your feed and just having like an explanation of like a nerf in such an articulated, passionate way is just really powerful. So I think let's get Apple to see your videos, and then we can both work on some content.
Yeah, we would love that. Thank you, Alex.
I appreciate that, man. I appreciate that.
There is one concept that we want to discuss with you, and because you are very much into photogrammetry, but what we see in the videos, you guys 3D model certain items that you guys have in your scene. What is your go-to strategy when you're choosing between photogrammetry or modeling? So when do you choose to photogrammetry an object, or where do you say, oh no, we have to model it and put it in the scene?
I always say if it's super complex, like a tree and a load of leaves and grass, it is quicker to use that as a scan, photogrammetry scan, than it is to model. So it's about the speed. If you can go and get that specific thing really quickly with your phone, I suggest doing that. But also if it's, for example, an artifact that definitely needs to be scanned and can't be recreated, then I would say scan it. If things are like, I need to make a ball or a square or an item that's going to just be one shape, then it's probably quicker to model it.
I assume something that's interactive, because if you have like buttons that need to be pushed in one way or another, I think that's when you kind of have to go for modeling rather than photogrammetry. But what about different methods of scanning? Because we were discussing this with Farhad. I mean, you had your traditional way of doing photogrammetry, which by traditional, I don't mean old. I just mean it's been there for a while now. And it's been there for a while because it works, and it works perfectly. And you have applications that are as accessible as Polycam to applications that are professional grade, like reality capture, where you can, throw in thousands of images and get the perfect model out. But of course, photogrammetry has its own advantages and disadvantages, which is why we've been experimenting with a lot of NeRFs and now recently Gaussian splatting. How do you see that changing the business model for you specifically? Because with Gaussian splats, now you can get plants to absolute perfection, right? You can view the scene that is extremely complex in hundreds of FPS, and all of these things should come into play when you're taking it to VR as well. Very experimental now, but how do you see that changing your model?
I feel like we're gonna, in the same way we have a video camera for people to make their own 360 content for Riverlink, these NeRFs and splats are going to allow people to make their own photogrammetry scenes. It just happens that we used to do it for them, but it's going to come to the point when we just provide the software, we just provide the world for them to import their things into. We've actually made our own scanning app that we use internally to do our own of phone scans quickly. Yeah, it's the same. We're using the Apple object thing in the background to make our own models. We found that to be quicker and a bit more accurate. But yeah, I think the splat stuff, we tried NeRF to VR quite a bit, and we tested that, but it was very intensive on viewing things inside it. So I've got to say that in-house, we haven't actually tried much splats to VR. Like, it hasn't been a thing that they've got enough time to work on yet. But as soon as that becomes a thing, imagine someone going to a road traffic collision and videoing the scene with their phone and now uploading that to the cloud, and then someone back at office, the headquarters of the police, can now put a headset on and walk around the scene. It's just going to make it more accessible.
Yes. And one other aspect of it for me and Farhad has been the how quick it is to capture a Gaussian splat. Because with photogrammetry, you need to be extremely careful. The number of photos matter and the detail matters. Whereas with Gaussian splats, what's really amazing is you might only have 10 seconds to take that shot. Maybe the crime scene or whatever scene, especially in emergency services, you might have the person there for 10 seconds, and then maybe they have to alter the scene, they have to change something, or maybe it's actually someone's life they're saving. Someone else is taking a shot right before all of that is happening. For me, a Gaussian splat is really easy to do in that scenario, because literally a 10-second video for us has resulted in amazing scans, whereas with NeRFs and photogrammetry, we couldn't get that prior to it. Of course, again, it has its limitations. We tried actually bringing it to VR. Farah, you want to tell Alex about it?
I think we were trying it for the past 2 weeks. For the first 10 days, we couldn't see anything with our right eye.
Yeah, there was a bug.
Everything that you could see was from the left one. So, and then the problem is solved now. But I would say this is just 2 months after the paper is released. So this is very, very new.
Yeah.
I think the application will come, I would say, in a couple of months.
Yeah.
But the quality that we can get with Gaussians, even in VR, is quite crazy.
Yeah, I mean, it's efficient to view as well, and that's a plus. I agree with you when you talk about nerves, because they can become quite intensive, especially if you put them through VR. With Gaussian splats, and I say this only speaking from us using it in Unreal Engine, and Unreal Engine only has one plugin at the moment, which is developed by a Japanese guy, which we've gotten in contact with, but it's hard to speak to him because he's a one-man trying to do all of these at the same time. So I understand that he's extremely busy. He's constantly updating the plugin, where the plugin had a bug with the VR experience. Now he's fixed that. It works. It looks freaking stunning. We went to the scene for Inglourious Bastards, and that was the coolest moment. Like, we cropped the scene, put a point light in the middle where the two characters are there. That's the opening shot as well, right?
Yeah.
And I'm literally just behind their head, and I'm just watching. I'm like, okay, this is phenomenal, but it still needs some work because that plugin is using Niagara particles. There are slight flickerings here and there, but generally speaking, it works fast, it works efficiently, and it's photorealistic. And I can imagine this just getting better and better. And speaking of this, I want to move on to one more topic that I wanted to discuss. You posted about this too. Lex Friedman podcast with Mark Zuckerberg, with codec avatars. That was done on a Quest Pro headset. For anybody that doesn't know what we're talking about, please go and watch this. It's basically Lex Friedman and Mark Zuckerberg in different rooms, different parts of the world, I imagine as well. And they had the Quest Pro headset on, and they were in this dark room, but they could technically see each other. They had photorealistic avatars that looked probably 99% accurate to their own look with their nuances of facial emotions. And it was the craziest thing. It was exactly something you would see in a cyberpunk film, but it's now possible. It's just not something that people can use because, as Mark mentioned, you still need the professional rig to do the capturing of the data. But once that is done, anybody with a Quest Pro headset can actually get into that experience. How do you think that's going to change the world, especially for everybody and for you as well? Because again, you have students, 25 people sometimes, who are getting into this experience. Now imagine all of these students are seeing each other in that experience. What do you think about that? Because you posted about it. I wanted to get your thoughts.
Yeah, it was another video that made me cry. Like, that was
You cry a lot, man.
Yeah, honestly, I do. I literally cry a lot. It is an emotional thing that I am connected to that I was so pleased to see, because if you watch the Oculus releases of their, I forget what they're called, their Connect conference every year for the last 2 years, you see progress in this space where you see their avatars being developed over the years, and then you see them putting cameras onto headsets, looking at mouths, and then you know what's coming. And then if you when we saw that, it was stunning. But then imagine forwarding that to what Apple are going to do. You saw their trailer where they showed you FaceTime with Vision Pro. That's not what FaceTime is going to be like. FaceTime eventually is going to be headset to headset in the same way, and that's why Meta dropped that. Meta did that so they could beat Apple to the punch, like basically did that, showing that they're a little bit ahead with stuff like that. But Apple are trying to push the fact that FaceTime from an iPad to a headset will be really cool. That'll look nice, but the future will be headset to headset. And then I imagine that everyone using a phone will be able to scan their face. You know, you'll be able to do that yourself. You can do that quite well now. We were doing that 3 years ago and putting people into rigs, and we did snooker players for a snooker game. We scanned their heads using photogrammetry. And although Meta say it's a big process, I think it's only a big process at the moment because they have to put themselves into a big rig and do lots of different facial movements and capture that in all the different types of lighting. But yeah, it was done on Quest Pro. There was a cable plugged in, so you could see that they were probably tethered to a PC. It wasn't standalone, but I imagine it will be standalone at some point. Everything is just converging at the moment to this, like, and people use the word metaverse, but everyone's going to want their own version of the metaverse for their own person, their own brand. It's converging to some amazing point at the moment that it is an emotional thing for me. I think if we can scan everything and make anything immersive, then it's going to be the last medium. Like there's going to be nothing else until we get to brain chips.
Yeah, I was gonna say that Neuralink is probably the next medium after that, right?
So shall we say the next podcast that we do together probably would be with a headset rather than using PC? So we are putting the Apple Vision Pros on, and then we are gonna do a podcast together. Probably.
Definitely, yeah. Let's do that. I imagine that would be amazing. We've done it already inside Quest, and I've actually done one in the back of a car in Texas. I was connected to the Wi-Fi in a headset. And I was doing a VR thing inside Engage VR. That was a couple of years ago. So if we can do a Vision Pro one, that'd be amazing, or a Meta Quest 3 one.
I would freaking love that. I have one last question for me. I don't know about Farhad. I want to know if there's anything in the virtual reality or extended reality world that you've heard about, that you might have seen that we haven't talked about. Is there anything interesting that has gauged your interest, maybe at a conference, at an event that you've been to? I mean, we did talk about, the Vision Pro, the Quest 3, but is there anything else that is going on that maybe we haven't heard of yet?
There was a podcast recently by Robert Scoble where he was interviewing a guy from Rewind.ai. That was a really cool piece of tech where they have a little pendant around your neck and an app that connects to your screens so that you can basically rewind time. So I could say in a week's time, tell me the top points we talked about on the Bad Decisions podcast, and it just goes and gives me a nice little list of everything. That's one thing. But the other thing is that someone mentioned about imagine the whole of YouTube as immersive experiences in the same way you're doing The Shining. Imagine every video that gets run through an algorithm that then gives you a 3D interactive version of that video. That is going to be bonkers. I don't know how that's going to fit in with stuff because there's going to be a lot of...
It's going to make sense because think about it, like AI. We haven't had the time to watch this, but we've heard about it, we've read about it. Adobe just had the conference, which was AI, and they talked about all of the different tools that are adding. AI will be able to generate missing detail, and it's going to do that so well that all of the 2D videos that you just said that we might not even know how to fix it. Well, AI is going to do the rest. I imagine that's what's going to happen, right? You're going to take something for The Shining.
Yeah.
Sorry?
I was going to say your Shining video then, where you can only go left and right and up and down a little bit because of the shot was only that way. You're going to be able to go behind the house.
Yes. There you go. Yes, because it's going to find out that that's the texture of the house, then it's going to rebuild it. Because if it's already doing that with Photoshop images, I assume that with videos, it's going to be possible. I think videos is actually possible now because that's what they announced.
In painting video, we should watch Adobe Max.
Yeah, we should watch that. Did you see that one, the Adobe Max conference?
Not yet.
Okay.
No, you must find the same thing, that there is too much to listen to at the moment. There's too much.
Yes.
Which is why your videos should be watched more, because they're nice bite-sized videos.
Thank you. So much, it means a lot. Farah, do you have any...
No, I think it was amazing talking to Alex. And we wanted to have this conversation for the longest time. I think we started texting each other, it was 3 or 4 months ago. And thank you very much for making this happen. And we cannot wait for RiVR CSI. I personally cannot wait for RiVR CSI. Please put videos of that when the demo comes out. No more private and NDA.
Yeah, no, don't sign any NDAs for that.
Okay. So at least get some demo out. We want to see it because you can turn that into a video game, actually.
Yeah. Video games are what video games are essentially. They're interactive movies, in my opinion, right? They're movies you can interact with. There's storytelling involved, and as long as you're creating that experience and you make it fun fun means different things for different people as well. For someone, fun is looking at a dead body and inspecting why that person is dead, right? That is fun for them. They can do that every single day of their life. Not to say it's fun to see a dead person, but it's fun to figure out puzzles. That's what I'm saying. And so if you can make that in Unreal Engine, I'm just pointing you towards that software, and it's photorealistic, and it's, I'm just kidding. If it's made in Unreal Engine or Unity, and it's photorealistic, and it's a puzzle that people have to solve. That sounds like a game to me already. Yeah. And so I would like to try that experience. I'm just saying.
Let's just make sure Netflix and also probably Black Mirror. Let's make sure Black Mirror and Netflix see this sort of thing.
I think that would be awesome. Well, Alex, thank you so much. We appreciate you giving us your Sunday and hope to catch up with you soon again.
It's amazing. The best Sunday podcast I've ever done.
Thank you so much, Alex. Thanks to everyone who is watching and listening. See you guys next week.